With two major successes in Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2, the idea of a third game in the series should make many excited. Think about it. Double Dragon introduced co-op and a unique ending. Double Dragon 2 introduced a darker story and a more fluid control scheme. Double Dragon 3 should be the next great innovator. In November of 1990, Double Dragon 3, The Rosetta Stone, was released to arcades. This was certainly a change in regards to releases. After having its previous sequel come out a year after the first, this sequel took a year and 5 months. Not to say that release dates makes or breaks games, but it served as the first many curiosities about the game. Keeping to its storyline, Marian is still not seen or even mentioned in the game, making any NES player instantly confused. The story this time is that Billy and Jimmy have left New York to complete their martial arts. On their way to go home after a 2-year absence, they are met by an old fortune teller, Hiroku. She tells the brothers that if they were to collect 3 Rosetta Stones scattered around the world and then head for Egypt, they would meet with the world's strongest enemy. She then warns them that none have returned alive after completing this task. This is all it takes for Billy and Jimmy to drop everything to go find the stones this old lady is talking about. Doesn't seem as solid an introduction as the other games, doesn't it? The first game had an introduction of Marian getting punched in the gut and carried off. The second has Marian getting gunned down and the heroes going out to gain revenge. This game, old lady talks about stones and a guy in Egypt. Another change came with the controls again. Instead of keeping to Double Dragon 2's control of being able to attack in front and behind you, it goes back to its original controls of Double Dragon 1. Already the doubts and questionable changes to what was something wildly successful back to its beginning controls lets you know something is fishy. But on the plus side, in keeping with innovation, Double Dragon 3 added an additional player to the mix, making the once 2-player co-op into a viable 3-player co-op. Another new trick to Double Dragon 3 is the addition of shops that accept additional coins as currency for unlocking new moves, gaining extra guys, pumping up your attack power, getting a weapon, or adding health. So who is the third player? Well, the better question is, what are your choices? Well, you have Billy and Jimmy, that's no question. The next is Sunny, a Technos character from another game called Tag Team Wrestling. Well, okay, that's a nice little addition just for Tecmo, right? The next character choice is Roni Iquedes, a world martial arts champion. Shin Simi, supposedly a brother of an original member of the Black Warriors, and finally Uyama Masahiko, a teacher of Joshin Karate. These are the characters that are available for the arcade version, and it's a surprising change of pace for the Double Dragon series. The only problem is each character, while different in how they play, doesn't make a difference when it comes to how the arcade played. Not only was the game expensive for players, letting them pay for new moves and power-ups, but it was janky on how the attacks seemed to not be on target with your opponent, even if it looked like you were in fist-to-face position. Then again, that just may be the movement talking. You take the deliberate steps in the game, but it makes you feel like you're just jumping around all over the place. Another change for the game was stage length. While the previous games were 4 stages long, the Rosetta Stone added an additional stage. Starting in America, you go from there to China, Japan, Italy, and finally Egypt. I've only described most of the North American and European release info up to this point. Japan had an easier time than the others with their release. The first major difference is how the player got to choose which character they wanted to play as. There's no immediate jump into the game as a lead brother here. Also, the shops weren't available either, meaning that while the Japanese version lost any chance of regaining health or increasing their attack power, they automatically had the additional moves and they didn't need to waste coins to get a weapon. They also had lesser damage given by enemies, so even getting to a point where you need to drop coins to continue isn't that much of a setback. Oh wait, did I say that the Japan version didn't need you to pay for a weapon? That's right. In the American and European releases, you had to pay to get a weapon because you couldn't take one from the hands of your enemy. This is absolutely unfair as the previous games allowed this, but instead you had to slot in that quarter in order to get one now. Let's get back to the story. As the brothers end each stage, Hiroku lets them be aware that they keep getting closer to the end. They beat enemies that would be expected from each new country. In America, you fight against street thugs. China, Bruce Lee lookalikes. Japan, samurai. Italy, gladiators. It all culminates in Egypt, where Gas Shock Horror, Hiroku had an ulterior motive to get all the Rosetta Stones, and then what? Does this old lady have enough fighting prowess and power that she can beat the world's strongest enemy? Then why did she need these two to get what she wants? Did she want them to get the stones because she was too old and frail to do so herself? The whole game stinks of forced storytelling. Anyway, you get to fight against the Yeti! And Cleopatra, because why not, to get to the treasure and win the game. Now according to NES lore, Marian isn't dead. This makes things a little more sensible when it's explained that Hiroku says that with the Rosetta, sacred stones, the brothers can find where Marian had disappeared to. This, while still smelling of forced storytelling, makes things feel more necessary. While before in the arcade the brothers are doing it just because, they're doing it now because there's a reason behind it. It doesn't help that Cleopatra, the final boss, is instead replaced by Princess Marian, Marian spelled backwards, but also spelled incorrectly. Also, there's this guy named Brett that dies in the beginning, and we're supposed to feel bad about it. Unlike its arcade counterpart, you don't buy additional characters, lives, or weapons in the shops. But instead, you gain the new characters after defeating them in a boss fight. The game is still difficult and frustrating, but the big plus is that unlike the arcade, you don't force yourself to look at your $5 bill and say, I need all of this. I don't need to let you know that the overall feeling of the game was something that rubbed fans of the previous iteration of Double Dragon the wrong way. It didn't help that Capcom had released Final Fight about a year before this release, and it made gamers truly feel that it was the next step in the beat-em-up genre. While Double Dragon 3 took the right steps in how it looked more realistic and opened up the possibility to expand the Double Dragon universe, both with the introduction of an open world with different locations and the missing Rosetta Stone, with the negative reaction and lack of wide distribution, Double Dragon 3 became the first black mark against the franchise. I have a theory as to why this game was not as much a critical success, and it comes down to the individuals responsible for making the game. You'd think that it'd be Technos that would be the ones to blame here, but that's not so. Technos had a lot on their plates with the creation of other games they were making at the time, like WWF Superstars. The real culprits for the creation of Double Dragon 3 was East Technology, whose only credit to gaming at the time was a 2D side-scrolling shooter called Gigans. This would explain the change in art style, gameplay, and once again, the addition of shops that required your actual money to purchase weapons and power-ups. The grumblings from North America and Europe's version may have also influenced the Japan release in that regard, since it took 2 months between November's general release for Japan's build to have been made. During 1991, from July to December, Marvel Comics released 6 issues of Double Dragon, featuring the main 3 characters of the series in some frankly odd-looking situations. I won't be able to go into full detail, but let me show you some things in these separate issues. In issue 1, we learned that this doesn't take place in New York after a nuclear fallout like in the original Double Dragon, but rather Oligopolis. The main villain isn't Willy, and any mention of the Black Warriors, the gang in the games, is not even spoken about. Instead, we get Nightfall and his merry band of supervillains with various superpowers. Marian is police officer. This is a good thing, since any other version of Marian is shown only to be a damsel in distress. Then again, we're talking an officer with no powers going up against a rogues gallery of supervillains, so is there really any difference? The introduction of the Double Dragons not being master martial artists, but superheroes that transform into their battle state. They are using something only known as the Dragon Force. Our heroes nearly go to blows to win over Marian, but are stopped when they are told that while they've been hunting down Marian, Nightfall is going to take the Dragon Force for himself and take over the world. In issue 2, the plan to take the dragon statue is achieved by a woman who can shapeshift into anyone. Take note of the pink boxes and how they make her invisible. Sensei dies, and I don't care. I didn't get to know this character, so why should I? Now, if he was badly bloodied or injured horrifically, then maybe I would pay attention to what nonsense he's babbling about, going beyond the Dragon Force. Despite being kidnapped and held under pouring sand over her head, Marian is back to work already. Damn, talk about getting those hours. Stealth conjures up an army of goons, and Billy and Jimmy make short work of them despite having lost their powers. It is established that clearly neither one of them are masters in Sosetsuken and needed to use the powers to fight off so many before. So how come they can do it now? Oh, and after that, they get their Dragon Force powers again and have their auras. They both think the other is an illusion by Stealth. Either these two have no faith in each other to fight it out until the end, or they are a lot more stupid than I give them credit. For over half of issue 3, the Double Dragons fight, and unlike the games, it adds nothing to the story at all. Both Lead brothers are nearly killed by their own stupidity, if not for Marian getting a lucky shot through Stealth's hand. Also, the statue's alive now for some reason. Everyone in issue 4 is stupid to attack a dragon. The brothers have no powers and no plan to take it out. They would have done nothing, letting it be free out there killing random criminals if not for Marian. Hell, Marian is the closest to taking down the thing. Why are we focused on these two brainless Power Ranger wannabes? I want to see what Officer Marian is able to do when she's not babysitting these two. Also, hi Stanley! Why are you Billy and Jimmy's father? And now it is backstory time with Stan Lee on issue 5. Apparently the Dragon Force is a power that was handed down long ago, and we're given an origin to it now. Billy Lee responds, "We all know about that story, Stan. good to know that you knew, but I, the reader, didn't know until now. We're told the opposite of Dragon Force is Counter Force. The one who wields the Counter Force is Nightfall, Stan Lee's friend and murderer of Jimmy and Billy's mother. With the Counter Force, you can't control the heart, but rather the soul. And the big reveal at the end is that Nightfall has the soul of Lee's dead mother in a glass orb. Winter Boss Rush mode in Issue 6. The Lees get trounced something fierce and go for a combined strike. It fails to do anything Nightfall. They break the glass sphere containing the soul of their mother, and Marian gets possessed. Instead of finishing off with a big fight, they contain Nightfall, a dragon statue, and the comic ends. Here's the main problem with the comics. They have nothing to do with the games. Oh sure, you have a loose conception of Double Dragon 1 coming out of the first issue, but everything else is entirely made up. The Lees aren't masters of Sosetsuken and train under a sensei that I had no time to understand or feel attached to. And speaking of the Lees, Billy is not what I expected him to be. He doesn't take his training seriously and will continuously joke in a fight while Jimmy pulls the straight man in the duo. Shouldn't they both be serious? Or rather, how about showing the brothers outside of martial arts and doing other things? Maybe show Billy as an artist to explain his outgoing personality. Maybe Jimmy is an individual who takes keen notice on the news and is serious because he reads about the many things that are wrong with the world. Marian comes out better from this comic in comparison to the rest. She's no longer just a pretty face, but an active force for the law. She was the one who put a stop to stealth and saved the Double Dragons from killing themselves. Nightfall did nothing until the end, and when he fought the dragons, he just kept batting them away until they pulled a Deus Ex Machina on his ass. Stan Lee as the Double Dragon's father, I would bet was just a laugh riot at the writer's room, but he has no other purpose than to explain a lot of backstory. It's time to update the patented series review line to see what is the best so far in comparison to what is the worst. The comics get a lot of things wrong about Double Dragon, but you can feel at the end it was trying its best to redeem itself and cover missing information. Double Dragon 2 remains on top, and with how things are going, maybe it will stay there. Or maybe something is going to come and take its throne. After all, I think anyone that read the comics and played the games would know better than to make the Lees knock off Power Rangers.